Hi, everybody. Welcome to the third episode of Futurism Forever. Tonight, we're going to be talking about The New Ethical Religion of Speed by FT Marinetti. I've got my two co-hosts with me. Arjuna's back, and Alkaz is here for the first time. What's up, guys?
Hello. Yeah, so we're just gonna go through it's Marinetti's document, New Ethical Religion of Speed. It's in his collected writings, so if you want to pick up a physical copy, just buy his I think it's selected writings, right?
Critical writings.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, critical writings of FT Marinetti. You can buy off Amazon for like $20, but we also have a PDF of the New Ethical Religion. So it might be a good idea to put it in like the description, if anything.
Yep, for sure. Um, so anyway, without further ado, let's start reading. In my first manifesto of February 20th, 1909, I declared that the splendor of the world had been enriched by a new beauty, the beauty of speed. Following on from dynamic art in this futurist year of our great liberating war, the new ethical religion of speed is born. Christian morality served the purpose of developing man's inner life, but today it no longer has any purpose, since the divine is utterly finished. Christian morality protected man's physical self from the excesses of sensuality. It regulated his instincts and gave them a certain balance. Futurist morality will protect man from decrepitude brought on by lethargy, nostalgia, fastidiousness, immobility, and custom. Human energies increased a hundredfold by speed will command time and space. Mankind began by despising the measured, monotonous rhythm of the great rivers, which was identical to the rhythm of his own gait. He envied the rhythm of torrents, which was like that of galloping horses. Man gained mastery over horses, elephants, and camels to reveal his divine power through an increase in speed. He forged an alliance with more docile animals, captured animals which were rebellious, and fed upon those animals which were edible. He extracted electricity and different fuels from the universe so as to create new allies in the guise of engines. Man made use of fire to shape the metals he had won and made malleable so as to create an ally for himself in the shape of fuels and electricity. In this way, he established an army of slaves who were hostile and dangerous, yet sufficiently domesticated to carry him swiftly over the earth's horizons. Tortuous pathways, roads that follow the sluggish rivers, then wind along the uneven backs and bellies of the mountains. These represent the laws of the earth. Never any straight lines, always arabesques and zigzags. Speed at last presents mankind with one of the characteristics of divinity, the straight line. The murky Danube in its muddy robe turns its eye on its inner light, full of fat, libidinous, fertile fish, as it rushes gurgling between implacable, steep-sided mountains, as though along the immense central highway of all the world, a confluence revealed by the swiftly rolling wheels of the constellations. When finally will this stolid river permit a motor car, baying like a crazed fox terrier, to pass along it at breakneck speed? Before long, I hope to see the Danube running in a straight line at 300 kilometers an hour. We have to persecute, lash, and torture all those who inveigh against speed. The guilt of those flophouse cities weigh heavily, where the sun takes up its residence, slows to a standstill, and moves no more. Who can really believe that the sun will be gone this evening? Come on, get a move on. It's not possible. It has settled down here. The piazzas are lakes of stagnant heat. The streets are rivers of languid fire. For the moment, there's no way of getting through them. There's no escape. Flood of sunlight. You would need a frozen boat or a suit of ice to cross that fire. Back into your den. A dictatorship with police repression of light, which imprisons any rebel who brings a breath of fresh air and speed into town. A sun siege. Woe betide the body that steps out of the house. A clubbing on his head. Dead. Solar guillotines above each door. God help anyone with a thought in his head. Two, three, or four leaden notes fall on him from the ruins of the bell tower. Inside the sultry house, the anger of nostalgic flies. straining of thighs and sweat-soaked memories, immoral languor of Sunday crowds in Venetian lagoons. Speed, whose essence is an intuitive synthesis of all forces in motion, is naturally pure. Slowness, whose essence is the rational analysis of all weariness at rest, is naturally unclean. After the destruction of the age-old good and the age-old evil, we are creating a new good, which is speed, and a new evil, which is torpor. Speed equals the synthesis of every kind of courage and action. It is aggressive and warlike. Torpor equals the analysis of every sort of festering caution. It is passive and pacifist. Speed equals scorn for all obstacles, desire for the new and the unexplored. It represents modernity and moral health. Torpor equals stasis, enchantment, immobile admiration of obstacles, nostalgia for things already seen, idealization of weariness and inactivity, distrust of the unexplored, rancid romantic concepts of the wild, wandering poet, of the filthy, shock-headed, bespectacled philosopher. If praying means communicating with the divine, then hurtling along at great speed is a prayer, the sanctity of wheel and rail track. Kneel on the track to pray for divine speed. One must kneel before the spinning gyro compass, which at 20,000 revolutions a minute is the highest mechanical speed attained by man. We must steal from the stars the secret of their stupendous, incredible speed. Let us take part in the great celestial battles and face the star bolts hurled by invisible cannons. We are pitted against the 1830 Groombridge star, which whirls at 241 kilometers a second, against Arthur, which whirls at 413 kilometers a second. Invisible mathematical gunners. Wars in which the stars are both shells and gunners, striving through speed to flee from a bigger star or to hit a smaller one. Our saints are the innumerable particles that penetrate our atmosphere at an average speed of 42,000 meters per second. Our saints are light and electromagnetic waves of 3 by 10 meters per second. The exhilaration of high speeds in a motor car is simply the joy of feeling oneself made one with the one divinity. Sportsmen are the first neophytes of this religion. Before long comes the destruction of houses and cities to create huge meeting places for cars and airplanes. So we're going to break there and discuss what we've read so far. That's like the halfway point. So what are your guys' thoughts on like the first half of that?
Um, so how do I start here? He mentioned speed a lot, as we can see. But I want to like go into what does he mean by speed? Like, does he mean it literally or poetically? Do you think?
I think a bit of both. I think he's excited by new technologies like the automobile, like the train, like the airplane, which he gets more into in the second half. Um, but yeah, like also poetically, like he talks about how like torpor, he kind of like he starts it out by talking about Christian morality and how we move past that. I think he associates Christian morality with torpor. Um, like he brings up passivity, um, stuff like that. Like speed is warlike. It's power. Um,
I think
whereas,
his point. I think his point was that Christianity at one point reflected speed, but now had turned into torpor because
yeah, it's
it was holding Italy back. The clergy was holding Italy back from modernizing. And at
yeah,
one point, it represented a dynamic force against the ailing times of the Roman Empire.
yeah,
So he's making a like relativist argument against Christianity, essentially.
yeah. That's how he starts it out. I don't know. I like the intro talking about how like man dominates nature and it's being like the main driving force. He
Yeah,
talks
that too. He's emphasizing a I think the word is like anthropomorphic centric or some shit like that. I forgot the word now, but it's like a human centric view of nature because he's saying it's revolving around man as we progress and kind of subordinate all other elements of nature to our will.
Yeah,
So I think he's doing something interesting, and he's not placing man as a part of nature, but man above nature.
yeah. Just kind of consistent with how the fascists viewed nature, and like their attitude towards it. They weren't like they were conservationists, but they like saw man as stewards of nature. Like they
Man
were,
relied on nature for subsistence, but it was still its superior.
yeah, exactly. They dominated nature.
It's like a food chain. Like a predator is superior to the prey, but the predator requires the prey as subsistence.
True, true.
And since wait, I think your mic's going a bit weird now.
Uh,
Okay, it's
that
good
is
now. It's good. That's good now.
okay. Um, Still good.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Where were we?
Uh, where was this? So
Torturous.
yeah, I think now your mic's a bit too low.
Is it?
Raise it a bit.
I'm just like using my speakerphone, and I don't know.
Okay, there you go.
The
There,
app is being wonky, but
that's good now.
okay, that's good. Yeah, where
Yes,
were we?
yeah. So you're talking about how he thinks man is above nature. The rest of him is just him exemplifying that by talking about the rivers, the mountains. Um, and then he says we have to persecute, lash, and torture all those who invade against speed, essentially saying uproot anything which goes against their speed. So it's kind of reminds me of Nick Land and his point of how you just need to keep on accelerating capital.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably
Definitely,
got
and
some influence from there, but Land is a materialist. Marinetti was an idealist, so
yeah, um, that is a good distinction to make. But yeah, you definitely get the accelerationist vibe from this entire article. Um, like we don't have time to look back. It's a waste of time. It's counterproductive. He talks about the straight line. How there's only like one path forward. Um,
he's basically saying, yeah, like the old social orders, they're gone. We can't bring them back.
yeah, it's a waste of our time looking back to idealized former times that we imagine were so great, but oftentimes weren't really that great. You know, um, yeah, we got to move forward. We got to create a world worth living in today. Traditionalism is like counter-revolutionary. It's counterproductive. Um,
It's just it's you're beating the dead horse with the stick, essentially.
yeah, exactly. Like let sleeping dogs lie.
They're not gonna get anywhere. Like even if like some sort of traditionalist group takes over, they're gonna be forced to adapt anyway. So it's like it's gonna shoot itself in the foot.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless you're like some weird and prim and where it's just gonna be like curb stomped.
I think that's wishful thinking too. Like, you know, I mean, if somebody chooses to move out to the woods and, live a hunter gatherer lifestyle, I'm not going to stand in their way. But expecting the entirety of civilization to collapse to accommodate this or trying to bring it down like yourself, like, it's not really going to go anywhere. On an individual like level, if you want to go do that, I'm not going to stop you, but I'm not going to join you either.
No point in stopping.
I'm not going to like follow you out to the woods to like starve to death. Seems pretty yeah, doesn't seem to go anywhere to me. Unless forces beyond our control like tear civilization down. But I'm not like holding my breath waiting for that to happen. Um,
Yeah, let's see what else is there in this first part. Okay, so yeah, then he goes into what speed and torpor is. Speed is a synthesis of every kind of courage and action. It is aggressive and warlike. Torpor, the analysis of every sort of festering. Yeah, we've read this already. His first definition of speed reminds me. It reminds me of like actualization, pure actuality, since he talks about courage and action, which is the point of like pure actuality of your consciousness actualizing reality. And like for a like for example like a social reform, you have to actualize it if you want to make your change on reality. So you have uh, that spill over into fascist actual idealism.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um,
I think it kind of proves that futurism was inevitably very much interconnected with fascism. It gets the so-called trad fascist angry.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, like we have to we like we're in control of our own destiny. Like we're at the steering wheel. We dictate what direction things go. Like, we're not slaves to the past or tradition. We're carrying the torches forward. That's
What?
definitely like, go ahead.
No. Oh yeah. So this isn't relevant to what we're saying now. But you remember how I told you I was listening to New Ruins earlier?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so one thing I dislike about New Ruins, which I think people should hear about, is when he talks about fascism, he did it in his video on the metaphysics of pure actuality. He did it on his video on Hegel, the ontology of fascism. He makes fascism out to be this like ultra clerical, this ultra traditionalist thing, because he talks about how under the fascist corporative state you'll have the church, you have the family, the union of man and woman, all that trad shit. But that I don't think that's a proper reflection of fascism. Like I hear that and like no, that's not fascism. That's just traditionalism. And people like get like a lot of like people who might be wanting to get into fascism, they get the completely wrong perception of what it is. They think it's some like traditionalist school or like something that will uphold the clergy when this isn't the case, like at all. Like they get the
yeah,
wrong idea. You have so many like traditionalists calling themselves fascists, but they don't even know what the philosophy is. They don't even know the historical roots of it. Like they call themselves like some of them legit call themselves capitalists and fascists, and it's like, dude, are you crazy? It's like,
yeah.
no, you're just a reactionary.
A lot of people look at like fascism in power and like, compromises were made. That's what real politics is. And like they base their fascism off of those compromises rather than the theory itself. A lot of people are also just like unaware of futurism as being like this important forerunner of fascism and like a key like inspiration for that whole movement.
People also don't recognize the romanticist in Fiume, because remember, Nunzio was a romanticist.
Yeah, for sure. Um,
And also the influence of Nietzsche, of Stirner onto fascist ontology. Since, well, I'm pretty sure Hegel denied the existence of an ego, Gentile did not.
yeah,
So like, fascism itself is egoist. So you have to keep that in mind, too.
I think all the
This,
best fascists were egoists. Like,
if you're a fascist, you automatically have to be an egoist, since pushing for the interests of the state is a form of egoism. Since remember, the state is just an ego constructed of a collective conscious.
yeah, yeah,
It's just its own ego.
for sure. Like, the leadership, like the aristocracy of fascism, we're collectivist in a sense too, and like we believe in collectives and groups, but we're not a hive mind either. Not the forerunners
And
of
keep in mind, all
fascism.
collectives are fundamentally based off self-interest.
Yeah, true.
Like, why do you form a collective unless you have something to get out of it? Like, the only other way you're going to be holding that fruit is sheer force, which most of the time will not work well.
Yeah, for sure. Um,
But, it's just so many people get into fascism, which I think we should really make like an entire video dedicated to so-called fascist conservatives and traditionalists.
yeah, we're calling them out. Yeah, we're like the post-futurists or neo-futurists. Like we're bringing this mentality back to the current struggle because these trad fags are holding us down. They're like an embarrassment, and yeah, I
Gotta
wanted to,
get that Aryan trad wife.
yeah, it's all just it's like leave it to beaver nationalism. Like most of them, they're not even talking about Evola or radical traditionalism or anything like that. Usually, like they're talking about leave it to beaver in 1950s suburbia, which
I actually hate that more than like Catholic or like feudal reactionaries. I hate them more, like those 50s and 60s romanticists. I hate them more, to be honest.
yeah, they're like one of my biggest pet peeves in this whole thing. You know, like suburbia in like the 1950s Americana, like that is a product of modernity. It's like a less malignant form of the same tumor. It's not a solution to our problems. It's nothing to strive
It's not
toward.
it's bourgeois modernity.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, like fascism is modernist. It was not bourgeois in its characteristic at all.
yeah.
Like
They're just
the whole thing about like the nuclear family, it's what Marinetti would describe as lethargic and nostalgic. It holds man and woman back because
yeah, for
you
sure.
tie them to the suburban environment of the man working his 9 to 5, his middle class job, the woman cooking, and the children being raised there. Just and it's like you also have this form of petty bourgeois morality. Like you know what I'm talking about. Like everyone knows what I'm talking. You know that middle class to white suburban morality and ethics. Like that shit really gets to my nerves.
Yeah, it's get fat, be comfortable, don't struggle, avoid pain, avoid danger. That's not fascism, bro. Like you're
Yeah, like live
misrepresenting us.
comfortably, start a family. To make myself clear, I don't have anything against starting a family. That's beautiful and all, but there's a difference between starting a family and living like a middle class snob.
Yeah, just living a comfortable existence
like
and
like like when traditionalists talk about raising a family, I mean like actual reactionaries and actual like Christian Orthodox Catholic traditionalists, they're not talking about middle class life. They're talking about peasant life, which was very much full of struggle, full of work, full of doing stuff. Like you wouldn't just sit around, like you wouldn't just like be living comfortably. You'd have work to do. You'd have a purpose. There's no like petty bourgeois snobby morality or like that whole gated community shit.
yeah, that whole like rugged working man lifestyle is just like it's so foreign to like people today. You
Like
know,
I'd prefer that over the middle class lifestyle of the 50s and 60s.
yeah, at least like how it was portrayed, like, people look at it with like a certain level of nostalgia. They like ignore the bad things that were going on at the same time. It's just like it's utopianism and like nostalgic utopianism, not even looking forward to creating something new that's going to be like a utopia. It's romanticizing an era of the past that, A, you can't bring back, and B, isn't worth bringing back in my opinion anyways. It's just like counterproductive and counter revolutionary, and like I don't know, I hate these tendencies.
I
um
Yeah, I'm on a similar note. I want to direct my intentions of the communists for 1 minute because I remember my friend told me something interesting, and I want to bring it up for a moment. But we should also we should also read Marinetti's Beyond Communism, which is found in Critical Writings.
Yeah, yeah, we can
Yeah, but
definitely do that
so
one.
on the topic of the middle class, I remember my friend. He has this Russian friend. Like he lives under Russia. He lives in Russia. He's Russian, and he he has access to a bunch of like a Russian archive sources from the Soviet Union because he lives in Russia, so he can like access these Russian websites. And he sent me like a source. I don't think I have it anymore, but just trust me on this. If I find it, I'll give it to you. But it was like it was like comparing like income between between like Eastern Bloc nations and the West. And something interesting that I found was when they were comparing the Soviet Union and the U.S., if I recall correctly, uh, the average income in the Soviet Union was basically like the average lifestyle in the Soviet Union was equivalent to the average middle class lifestyle in the U.S. And this is one of my critiques of the Soviet Union. It was just a mass application of petty bourgeois middle class values by the Brezhnev era onto society as a whole.
Yeah,
Like look at Soviet propaganda from the time. Look at their postcards. It's the most petty bourgeois stuff. Like, come on. Like,
yeah,
have you not seen this stuff? Like, you have those like beautiful postcards of the Soviet modernist architecture, which I like. But then it has like more like stuff you'll literally find that these like American conservatives who like larp about the middle class lifestyle, like it's literally stuff they're gonna like coom over because it's like you have the mother, the father, the children, maybe a family pet. You have stuff like that. It's like exactly what they fetishize. It's like in the Soviet Union there was that, but applied on a larger, on a broader scale. It's like one of my main criticisms of the Soviet Union by the Brezhnev era. That's why I don't really. It's why I have a distaste for that era specifically.
yeah. There was like Russian futurism or Soviet futurism too,
Kung
but
Fu,
yeah, but
but
like
that was purged by Stalin.
that was purged by Stalin, and they embraced like a Soviet realist aesthetic instead. And I think that's when their propaganda became like less revolutionary and like avant-garde and more bourgeois middle class again.
Yeah, it began with Stalin, but it wasn't under Stalin yet because most people under Stalin still lived like they lived like obviously I'm not like one of those like super anti-Soviet people personally, but like people under Stalin weren't living the best. Like let's be real here. Like it's not like compared to the Brezhnev era, right? Which is what I'm
Yeah,
talking about. Like it started with Stalin though, with as you said, socialist realism. The aesthetic is very similar to like the aesthetic that these Western conservatives like pushing forward.
yeah. I think they were both like inspired, like both the capitalist nations and the communist ones, or the Soviet
I
Union, were
think they
inspired
all
by
and
like
then got like poisoned by petty bourgeois moralism.
yeah, but they were both inspired by like automated labor and like Fordism. And I think
Oh
that's
yeah,
like a
especially the Soviet Union. You've heard of Ogas, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I've read into it a bit, like from like the actual Russian archives. It's pretty interesting, but it's like as you said, it's like about automation, about like embracing this like carefree lifestyle where all your needs are accommodated for, and it's like what's what what more Western thing can you think of than that? What more bourgeois notion can you think of than that?
yeah,
It's a plague. And like you have these like so-called fascists, these so-called like right-wing neo like paleo conservative who try like hopping onto the whole fascist aesthetic, and it's like no, piss off, we don't want you here.
yeah. We want revolutionaries only, people who want to uh, create something new. Like people, like I'd say, like the same thing. Even like attaching yourselves too much to like the first wave of fascism and like the former um the original movements. I mean, like we can't recreate that either. Like we do need to establish something new for the 21st century.
Like, yeah, especially if you're in America, like we're never gonna do a march on Rome. We'll never be able to establish like some based U.S. fascist imperium. Like, let's be real, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, like we all take inspiration from that. We all enjoy the history, but like don't get too attached to it like that you're not willing to like consider new ideas or think outside of the box. Like I don't know. There is a huge like larpy tendency in all this too.
The
And that like
fashion wave posters.
yeah, which is like total nostalgia for it's no better than the 1950s like fetishists and like trad fag. It's a little more radical, I guess, to a certain
But it's not
extent. But
really
like,
radical still, because it's like,
yeah,
well,
well,
what
like,
change are you bringing by like posting vaporwave edits of Mussolini?
true. I mean, swastikas are kind of taboo to a certain extent, but you
Yeah,
know, at the
I don't
same
even
time,
like the symbol that much, if I'm gonna be honest.
I'm more into the Italian side of things personally. But you
The one
know,
symbol I do like is the black sun, though.
it is very aesthetic. Um,
That's the one symbol that I like.
yeah,
I was never a fan of like the other NS symbols. But I think the fasces is still pretty nice though.
yeah, I like Roman aesthetics personally. I'm Italian, so it's like ethnic
Yeah,
bias probably,
I'm a
but
Hellene, so I also like the aesthetic.
yeah, for sure.
I think it could be merged in like a modernist style, which I think would be nice.
Yeah, like those old symbols need to be updated to reflect like 100 years of like progress, for lack of a better term. Like things have evolved since then.
Yeah, exactly.
Um, yeah, we should get back to the text itself, though. We went
All
off
right,
on a
so
bit
where
of a
did we leave
tangent.
off at?
Um, the exhilarations of high speeds in a motor car, the joy of feeling oneself made one. Sportsmen are the first neophytes of this religion. Before long comes the destruction of houses and cities to create huge meeting places for cars and airplanes. Like that kind of describes what we have right now. It kind of describes suburbia in a lot of ways. Like the public square in urban centers is largely being replaced by like the parking lot outside of McDonald's or something. It's kind of prophetic of Marinetti. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The destruction of houses and cities for huge meeting places for cars and airplanes. Yeah, that's interesting. So you want me to read from here?
Yeah, do you want to pick up from there and read the second half?
Yeah, sure, I can read from here.
Okay.
So, alright. Places inhabited by the divine or trains with restaurant cars for dining at high speed. Oh, before I continue, I'll cast that in the chat just so the viewers also know that he's not going to be talking for this session. I don't know if you saw it, Giovanni.
Yeah, I kind of picked up that he wasn't
Yeah,
saying
it's just
anything.
because
So,
you introduced him at the start, but he hasn't said anything, so I just wanted to let the viewers know.
yeah, he's
Alright,
recording.
yeah, he's recording, so
Maybe he'll talk
he's
next
here.
time.
But he's just not talking. Um, So yeah, places inhabited by the divine or trains with restaurant cars for dining at high speed. Railway stations, especially those in the American West, where trains speed along at 140 kilometers per hour, taking in the water they need without stopping, together with the mailbags, bridges and tunnels, the Place de Opera in Paris, the Strand in London, racing car circuits, cinemas, radio telegraph stations, the huge pipes conducting mountain water to snatch electrical power from the atmosphere, the great Parisian courtiers who, through their swift invention of fashions create a passion for the new and the hatred of the deja vus. The hyper modern industrial cities like Milan, which, as the Americans say, have punch, that is, the clean, precise blow with which the boxer administers his knockout. Battlefields, machine guns, rifles, cannon, and shells are divine. Mines and detectors, blowing up the enemy before he does the same to us. Combustion engines and rubber tires are divine. Bicycles and motorcycles are divine. Gasoline is divine. So is religious ecstasy inspired by 100 horsepower. The joy of moving from third to fourth gear. The joy of pressing down on the accelerator. The growing pedal of musical speed. Discussing the people entangled in sleep. The feeling of revulsion I experience when going to bed at night. I pray every night to my little electric lamp for its formidable speed at work within it. So it's kind of funny. Um, Heroism is a speed that has attained itself, traveling over the biggest of all racetracks. Patriotism is a directed speed of a nation. War is a necessary lusting of an army, the main driving force of a nation. The motor car airplane at high speed permits us to scan and rapidly take in many distant points on Earth, that is, to do the job of analogy by mechanical means. Anyone who travels a lot automatically acquires a student ability to look at things systematically as he approaches them, to compare one with another and to discover profound similarities between them. Great speed artificially reproduces an artist's intuitive analogy. The ever-present, untrammeled imaginative speed equals speed. Creative genius equals speed. There's active speed and passive speed. Controlling speed, the chauffeur, and controlled speed, the motor car. Speed that models writing, sculpture, and speed that is modeled, what is written or sculptured. There is speed that is born by different speeds, a train both pushed and pulled by two locomotives, one in the front and the other behind, and speed that carries other different speeds, the ocean liner carrying several motor cars capable of different speeds, different men in motion, sailors, engines, passengers, waiters, cooks, people swimming in the choppy waters of the swimming pools and the water churned by the swimmers, and many dogs running or barking, and lots of jumping fleas, and the potentials of many resources. Another example of speed carrying different speeds is the motor car that carries a chauffeur, plus the speed is thoughts about the second stage of the journey of the whole of what remains to be covered, while physically the car the carries is still on the first stage. On arrival, the chauffeur in fact experiences the boredom of what he has already seen. Our life must always be a carrying speed. Thought speed plus body speed plus speed of the deck that bears the body plus speed of the element, water or air that carries the deck, boat or airplane. Detach thought from the mental roads so as to place on the material one, as if with a pencil imbue a roadmap which smells, dissemination of the body, thoughts, dissemination of the spirit equals acceleration is speed. Speed destroys the laws of gravity. It makes the values of time and space subjective and therefore turns them into slaves. Kilometers an hour is not equal. They vary in length and duration for the man is speed. Let us let us imitate the train and the motor car, which can build everything that exists along the way to move at the same speed in the opposite direction, and arouse in everything that exists along the way a spirit of contradiction, that is, of life. The speed of the train decrees that the landscape it crosses be divided to two landscapes that rotate in the opposite direction from its own. Every train carries away with it the nostalgic spirit of anyone who watches it passing by. Things that are some distance away, trees, woods, hills, mountains, look fearfully at this rushing forward of things that are flung in the opposite direction into the train, then they decide to tag along with them, but despondently and more slowly. Every eh, every body moving at speed rocks from side to side and tends to become a pendulum. Race along, race along, race along, fly, fly. Danger, danger, danger to right and to left, below and above, inside and out. Scent, breathe, drink, and death. Militarized revolution of gears. Precise, concise lyricism. To enjoy more coolness and more life than in rivers and seas, you have to find the ice cold slipstream at full speed. Uh, when I flew for the first time at the Vader, Bielu, I don't even know. I felt my breath. I felt my breast opening up like a great hole into which the vast skyscape was delightfully plunging, smooth, cool, streaming down. Instead of the slow, diluted sensuality of walks in the sun among flowers, you should prefer the wild, cheek-coloring massage of a frenzied wind a growing lightness, an infinite sense of pleasure. You skip lightly, nimbly from your plane. You have shed whatever was weighing down upon you. You have conquered the mugginess of the flight path. You have overcome the law that forces man to creep about. You have to be continuously altering your speed so that your conscious mind may also take part in it. The absolute beauty of speed is encountered on the double bend, for it pits itself against the resistance of the ground, second, against the varying atmospheric pressures, and third, against the attraction of the void created by the bend itself. Speed along a straight line is enormous, course and reckless. Speed on a bend, and after the bend is speed come alive and controlled. The wonderful drama of zooming along the racetrack. The car tends towards splitting itself in two. The heaviness of the rear portion, which turns into cannibal and searches for slopes, ditches, the center of the earth, for fear of new dangers. Better to perish at once than continue to take more risks. No, no, no. All glory be to the future super train which, with a mere shrug at the soldiers or touch the wheel, will pull the rear end of the vehicle away from the ditch and set it once again upon its straight course. Closing to us, among us without tracks, motor cars hurtle along, turn back on themselves. They lurch to the side of the curve of the horizon, flimsy menaced by all of the problems set for them by the bends. The double bend conquered at speed is the supreme manifestation of life, the victory of the self over the treacherous intrigues created by our weight which seeks, through betrayal, to murder our speed, dragging it down into a pit of immobility. Speed equals dissemination plus condensation of the eye. All space passed through by a body is condensed in that same body. Ground speed, love of the earth, woman, dissemination throughout the world, horizontal lust, equals motoring along lovingly caressing the white womanly curves of the roads. Airspeed, hatred of the earth, vertical mysticism, the upward spiraling self towards the nothingness. God equals aviation, the purgative agility of Easter oil. The speedy engagement of a train's wheels with their gnashing teeth, the wheels drawn from the earth, all of the sounds that are dormant in matter. Under the pressure of the train, the wheels leap, flash along in the quick, vibrant snare of the deeply felt moment. Roads traveled by motor cars with slipstreams of globular sounds and spiraling smells. This 100 horsepower automobile is an extension of the caverns of Mount Etna. Roads traveled by cars as well as railway lines have a swaying, supple forward rush, seeking to wrap themselves speedily along the finishing post, rises up at some point on the horizon. Intense pleasure of sitting alone on the dark backseat of a limousine, speeding along between the dancing, glittering neon signs of some capital city by night. That very special pleasure of feeling oneself to be a speeding body. I am someone who often eats at railway station between one train and another. My gaze oscillates between the clock on the wall and my seeming play. The spinning anxiety, mine, spinning anxiety, memory airstream pierces my heart. I'm defeated at once with speed. One has only to believe in the solidity, resistance of speed, the strength and the complication of thought, sophistication of desires and of appetites, the paucity of the soil, hunger for honey, spices, meats, and fruits from distant lands, all insist on the futurist ethical religion of speed. Speed separates the male self from the female self. Speed destroys love, that vice of the sedentary heart, that grievous clotting, that hardening of the arteries restricts the flow of the lifeblood of humanity. Speed increases agility, increases the circulation of the blood. The railway engines, the motor cars, and airplanes of the world only speak and kill off the noxious, nostalgic, sentimental, pacifist, and neuralist moonlight. Italians, be speedy, and you'll be strong, optimistic, invincible, immortal.
I love that conclusion.
Yeah, the
Um,
conclusion's good.
be speedy and you will be strong, optimistic, invincible, immortal. Um, yeah, it's great. I do want to draw like a quick parallel here to J.G. Ballard. That like that section, ground speed, love of the earth woman, dissemination throughout the world, horizontal lust equals motoring along, lovingly caressing the white womanly curves of the road. Like, that reminds me a lot of Crash, like the fetishization of the automobile and speed, and he doesn't get into the car crash like Ballard does, but I think Ballard is like a kindred spirit of Italian futurism, in my opinion. I'm going to be getting into him on the channel eventually, but yeah, I think he's a kindred spirit of futurism. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
Um,
but I think everything I just read is basically the same as we talked about before.
yeah, it just like reinforces what we said in
Yeah, it
the
also goes, as you said earlier, it goes more into the automobile and the airplane.
yeah, gets into the technology itself. Like the first half kind of sets it up. But yeah. You
You have
kind
the
of
you have the poetic background which feeds into the technological fetishization.
yeah, in the second half.
Yeah. But yeah, it's pretty much the same thing, you know. Speed shall liberate man. That
Yeah,
whole type of stuff. And one thing that's interesting is the second to last paragraph. Speed separates the male cell from the female cell, which goes into his view on women since he's associating men with speed and woman as the as contrary to speed. So that kind of goes into his personal opinion on women, which I think is kind of kind of a nice little touch.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I like that section a lot. Like I said, it reminded me of J.G. Ballard. Um, which, yeah,
I find it interesting that he calls love a vice of the sedentary heart, but I think because he does glorify love in other works, but I think it's like he's referring to a different type of love here. Like in futurism and anthropology, he's addressing a group of, I think, British athletes who were all coincidentally homosexuals, and he basically applauds them on that, saying it's an intensification of the camaraderie found in sportsmanship, and camaraderie is a form of love. So I think here he is distinguishing between like the camaraderie type of love, which can boil down to sexual tension, and the type of love a man feels for his woman, which is more sedimentary, more romantic, you could say, which he disliked.
yeah,
Kind of goes into the whole harsh masculinity.
yeah, which we talked about in the last podcast. Yeah, Marinetti didn't have a lot of usefulness for like things that he perceived as like soft or um, nurturing or caring, things like that.
Don't get him wrong. He was a fan of womanizers because he thought they were volatile and virile. But there's a difference between being a womanizer because like if you go into like a Mafarka the Futurist, like the the only purpose there for like sex is just domination purely, because the men can reproduce by themselves in that society, but they still have like sexuality, but that's only for domination. So he that also plays into how he thinks like, you know, sexuality is only a tool for domination, lust, passions, and an intensification of a bond essentially.
Yeah. Um, yeah, to go back to J.G. Ballard and also like an updated like view on the role of the car and speed. I want to read this quote from The Car of the Future from Drive in 1971. J.G. Ballard said, "The car as we know it is now on the way out. To a large extent, I deplore its passing. For as basically old-fashioned machine, it enshrines a basically old-fashioned idea, freedom. In terms of pollution, noise, and human life, the price of that freedom may be high, but perhaps the car, by the very muddle and congestion it causes, may be holding back the remorseless spread of the regimented electronic society." Um, so, like, um, this was written in like 1915, so we're like 50 years on when Ballard said this, but like the car has kind of become like an old-fashioned symbol of like freedom. And it's like holding
Yeah,
back.
it was a product of the middle class bourgeois moralism too.
Yeah, that's kind of what it became. Goes to that line about Marinetti, like Marinetti had about like tearing down the cities and the towns and replacing them with meeting places for cars and airplanes, um, which kind of led to that. I don't know. I think for like post futurism or like a 21st century futurism, like the exact examples that like Marinetti used for speed. I like the idea of speed still, but like the car is kind of old fashioned at this point. It's kind of like on the way out. Personally, like I would implement like more I guess faster public transit, like faster trains, stuff like that. I wouldn't throw
Yeah,
trains
our
out.
public transport system, especially in the U.S. too, it's it's terrible.
Yeah, it's very lacking. Like in Japan, they have these like bullet trains and shit
In
that like,
China, in Japan, France.
yeah, we're still stuck on the car. Like our cities are designed to be
And
you
keep in
drive
mind,
around
China
everywhere.
has more like bullet, like high-speed rail than the entire world combined. So China is a futurist build.
Yeah, yeah, and we're falling behind because like I don't know, the automobile as like this symbol of freedom is like,
It's symbolic, so people hold on to it.
yeah,
Plus, in
but
the U.S., like our public, we spend too much on highways to develop our public transportation as well. As
yeah,
while Europe developed railroads and shit, we developed highways.
yeah, which is holding us back. I think.
Yeah, I'd say so too.
Yeah, for the 21st century futurism, I'd say like we need to look past the car and the automobile. Um, for Marinetti in 1915, I definitely see what he was excited about. It gave you all kinds of opportunities to um,
Yeah.
manipulate space and time in ways that you couldn't before that. We have to like adopt the same mindset in the 21st century. That doesn't mean like holding true to like every single like example of these ideas that he had available to him. Then like in the manifesto he said he wants this manifesto to be thrown into the dustbin of history when he turns 40. um
I think he's way past 40 now.
yeah, exactly. We got to keep moving forward as Marinetti would have wanted, you know. um yeah, keep looking forward.
We gotta start somewhere, like he did, so we start with him.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody references like everyone has their inspirations and people who they take inspiration from. Marinetti is definitely the high priest of post-futurism or neo-futurism. Carry the ideas, not necessarily attach ourselves to all the examples of
Yeah, we should just hold him
liberation.
in. We should recognize his significance, but we shouldn't like fetishize him too much. I'd say.
No, Marinetti would hate that. He
Yeah, but
wanted
no, we're he got us into this, so we gotta at least acknowledge our influences.
yeah, and he's not like a very known figure. No one else really covers him, like to the extent that we want to at Futurism Forever. So like we're gonna be
Yeah, I
going
think
through
like
like
with espousing ideas like this, like a lot of people are turned away, so we need to like go into like the origins of them. So I
yeah,
think people could like get a better grip through there.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, yeah, anything else that comes to mind from that second half that you want to talk about? I think we already called out the trad fags, the larpers who can't get past the the original movements who have like no vision forward for us except nostalgia. Like things were so much better back then, or like this is like we're very strict and like this is what futurism is. It can't be anything else. Like making an orthodoxy out of it. Um,
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
like the opposite of what the point of futurism is.
yeah,
Can't
none
be
of it.
orthodox about it.
The futurists weren't like that, and neither were any of the original fascists. Like they were revolutionaries. They were trying to establish something new. Um, yeah, we can't relive the past. You can read about it, analyze it, take notes, study it, but we can't recreate it. Um, we can revive the spirit to a certain extent, and I hope to do that. But yeah, we have be forward thinking and revolutionary.
Oh, your mic fucked up.
Sorry, am I
There
better
you
now?
go.
All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, like we have to be forward thinking and revolutionary like our heroes were. That's why they're our heroes. If they were just like radical conservatives or something, like in the doctrine of fascism, Benito Mussolini and Gentile say that like Joseph de Maistre is not like the high priest of what we do or whatever. I'm like paraphrasing, but we're trying to establish something new. Um, they were revolutionaries and we need to be the same. I'm repeating myself though. Um,
Yeah, the sentiment's gotten across.
yeah, I think we've driven the point home. Yeah, we need to be innovative, embrace new technology, embrace speed. The car doesn't really represent speed anymore. It's kind of commonplace. If anything, it represents
Future is
like,
in the train.
yeah, embrace the train, the airplane, new forms of technology that can, make us go even faster. We got to be speedy. That's how we'll be immortal. To reference that final paragraph.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good place to wrap it up. We've been going for almost an hour, so I think we have a pretty good podcast here.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I think we can start wrapping it up.